Hi there, I'm Susie Chandler with Northwest Neighbors Network, and we are a nonprofit that helps seniors age well in their very own homes. And we love connecting all of our volunteers with our members. And today we're privileged to be able to present this panel, and I'm going to hand it off to Adrian, who will give you more info. Thank you all for coming, really appreciate it.
Thank you, Susie, and thank you so much for all of you for being here today. What a wonderful turnout, and obviously information that people are interested in getting. Just high-level overview, it was advertised this way, but really what we are here to do is help you maintain your independence, or the people that you are here to gather information for, their independence for as long as possible. So we have a variety of folks from different disciplines that are here to share information on how to make that possible. We have Tracy Morecombe with Family Resource Home Care. My company is Forever Care Services. I'm a senior housing advisor. Peggy Sanders with Sanders Law Group, Law Firm, Law Group.
Elder Law.
Elder Law. Let me start that over. Peggy Sanders with Sanders Elder Law. And John Platt with Pro Fiducia. I'm actually going to hand this off so they can each introduce themselves so that you can learn a little bit more about them. And then what we'll do is we'll launch into a program. What we'll do is each person will share information about what they do and how they can help you. And then if you have any questions for that specific person, go ahead and ask them so that we don't lose anything that you're interested in learning. And then we'll have time at the end for some more questions. So we're going to start with Tracy Morecombe.
Hi there, I'm Tracy Morecombe, like Adrian said, with Family Resource Home Care. We serve Skagit County, Snohomish County, King County, and Pierce County. We're a locally owned and operated home care company, and our goal is to keep you safely at home.
Let me just leave this off. So again, Adrian Miller, my company is Forever Care Services. I'm a senior housing advisor, and what I do is I help seniors and their families find and secure assisted living, independent care, memory care, or adult family homes when it's time to move or you choose to move.
It's nice to have the mask off. My name is Peggy Sanders. My business, as Adrian mentioned, is Sanders Elder Law. I have an office at the corner of 76th and 223rd, about a block and a half, and those are very long blocks, but about a block and a half south of the hospital. And my firm is about providing services to elders and those who hope to be elders soon. And they include things like estate plans, which I'll talk a little bit more about later, probate for when someone that has passed away, what you do then. I also do insurance, long-term care insurance appeals when the long-term care insurance policy when the company says, no, we don't want to pay you. And other various and sundry legal services for focusing on elders.
My name is John Platt, and I am with Pro Fiducia Services, Inc. We are a business that serves in the capacity of people's estate planning, which we'll be talking about in more detail in a few minutes, but serving such as the executor of someone's estate or serving as agent under powers of attorney for financial decisions. And I'm very pleased that I have two members of my team with me here today. I'm Sarah Pappas and Melissa Walpole, and we look forward to your questions. Thank you.
So we're going to take this back down to Tracy and get a little more in depth into what each of us has to offer, and then any questions, please direct them to each of us as we go.
So a little bit about Family Resource Home Care. Our goal is to improve more lives, and we can do that in any situation that you might need companionship, traveling to and from doctor's appointments, care with your parents or yourself. We can provide respite. We do anywhere from 2 to 4 hour shifts up to live-in care. We can do 24/7. I like to say that we customize every plan for what you want and what you need. We're not cookie cutter, so whatever it looks like and wherever home is to you, that is what we can come in and help with. There's a few pieces of information back on the back table. Actually, we all have things back there. But one thing in particular is home care versus home health. We're unique. We're a home care company that also retain our home health license. We have an RN on staff. So we are able to sometimes come in and do a higher level of care than other home care companies. But it also just helps explain what the differences are. Home care is not medical, home health is. One is doctor's orders, one is not. There's also a brochure back there that says, how do I know if I need home care? And sometimes it's just a matter of family telling a person that they might need home care, or being discharged from a hospital under home care. But there's also just simply wanting companionship, or people to go out on walks with and such. There's also a brochure out there that talks about different services that we offer, and it also lists the 5 different Puget Sound branches that we have. And we are located in Idaho, Eastern Washington, and Oregon also. One thing I will say about Adrienne, we can work really well together. What her company, what she'll explain is we can work in conjunction with keeping people safely at home until they choose to move into a community, or they can also stay in their home, whatever, again, home looks like for them. It doesn't necessarily have to be a standalone home. We've also gone into assisted livings and memory care and cared for people that way. What's great about Peggy is you have your paperwork in order, so we can come in and really help quickly when you have your paperwork in order. So those are some few touch points on us. I also have my counterpart Pam Stone in the back hiding, but she's also here to help if you have any questions for us.
Anyone have any questions about home care? Not at this point. All right. There you go. Okay. I'm glad it's my turn because I get to take the mask off. Okay, so I always like to start. I can't speak sitting. I'm sorry. I have to stand up. It's a thing. Again, I'm Adrienne Miller. My company is Forever Care Services. And the way I got into helping families find senior housing was actually a personal story. And so I'm going to start and tell you my Aunt Alice story. I come from a line of ladies that live a long time. My grandmother lived to 96 and stayed in her own home. My aunt made it to 93 in her own home, and my mom was almost 95 in her own home. So we got to stay home, which is obviously the goal. With Aunt Alice, there was a little bit of a glitch, and one day I got a call. She had some help. She lived in a home down in Federal Way, and I got a call, and a helper came in every once in a while, and they thought, unfortunately, that Aunt Alice had had a stroke. She was slurring her words, she just wasn't making sense, and she seemed just not herself. So we rushed her off to the emergency room, and fortunately, it was something as simple as a urinary tract infection. And you may all know this, but I certainly didn't at the time. A UTI is the #1 reason seniors hallucinate. #2 is dehydration. Make sure you're drinking your water, please. So I said, great, it's not a stroke, she's gonna be fine. Give her some antibiotics, and we'll send her home. And the doctor said, whoa, where does she live? And she lives in her own home. This is her wish. This is what the ladies in our family do. And the doc said, well, tell me about that. Well, she's got someone who comes in here and there, and she gets to appointments. And the doctor said, no. I don't know, what do you mean, no? She is not safe to go home in her current condition. She probably wasn't safe before, but I cannot safe release her home. And my first question was, can you do that? It's her wish to go home. And the doctor said, I not only can do that, I must do that. So it started down a path of what happens next. My mother didn't have a room in her house except a downstairs bedroom that Alice couldn't navigate the stairs. I didn't have a room in my home, and Alice, quite honestly, did not want to come live with us. So we went down a path of finding a place for her, and it took a little bit, but we ended up finding a lovely adult family home where Alice lived for the next 1.5 years before she passed at 95. She hated every minute of it. Quite honestly, I will not lie, that woman was not happy with me for the rest of her days. She loved me, but that was that. But really what it did is it taught me that we can have all the wishes in the world, but if we don't have some organization, fortunately she did have a power of attorney that could step in and help her. She did have us in the area, But a lot of folks, may not have all their ducks in a row that way, and then still, even having all that organized, she didn't get to make a choice of staying home anymore. So her choices then were where to go. We looked at adult family homes, we looked at assisted living. She wasn't pleased with any of them, but we found a lovely adult family home. So what is that? If you choose to move, there are lots of people who move when they're still independent. And they're just sick of doing their laundry, sick of doing the vacuuming and tired of gardening, and they just want to downsize and have a little simpler daily life. Or maybe they're lonely. Isolation is huge for all of us. We all saw that in the pandemic. People of all ages really suffered from not being able to have social interaction. So some people choose. It's not an emergency, it's not a situation like my Aunt Alice, it's just time to go find another place to live. And we have some lovely independent communities in this area. There are some that are fully independent. There are some that are independent, and then the services can come to you if you need some help. There are some that are only assisted living, and there are some that are assisted living and or independent, and then might have a secure memory care. So that if someone has dementia, there is a secure place for them to live. And then here in Washington, we actually were at the forefront of the senior industry in so many different ways. We were the first state in the entire country, and the only state up until about 3 years ago, that actually had a law that pertains to what I do. Senior housing advisors, we have our own law on the books. If you want to look it up and you're the type that likes these things, it's RCW.18.330, and it outlines exactly what I can do and I can't do. And as a part of that, it really gives you, anyone you know, the confidence that when you're working with someone in my industry, you can ask very specific questions about the things that I need to adhere to. We're supposed to send out a disclosure of what we can and we can't do. And it's not a contract, you can work with anyone you like, but there are a couple signature places to show that I gave you the information I'm required to, and also to give me a health information release if there are any healthcare needs I need to share in finding a community. There are 13 specific questions that it outlines in things that I need to ask about healthcare needs, activity preferences, sleep preferences, geographic area. There's a little financial piece, because there are some communities that will allow you to move in, and after a certain amount of time paying the market rate, you can do what's called a spend down to Medicaid. If you run out of funds, after a certain amount of time, there are some communities that will allow you to stay there, and Medicaid will pay for your housing and care. There are a lot of places that don't offer Medicaid, so the financial question is really making sure that from the outset, we find the right fit for what your needs are. Ultimately, what I do, I go through all of the intake, I go out and make the calls, I check for availability, I set the appointments, I tour with you to really understand through your eyes when we walk through, is this a good fit or not? And ultimately then, if the choice is to move or the need is to move, you enter into a contract and then the move happens. So that's it, 40,000 feet. Costs are always a big question. Senior housing and care is expensive. There are independent apartments that you can get basically all of your living needs. And back on the back table, I have this form. It's basically it's hard to see from up here, but there's 2 columns, if you can see that. One column is all the things that typically a homeowner has: mortgage, property taxes, food costs, utilities, telephone, cable, gardening, all those things. All those things are typically included in an assisted living. So it's kind of a fun little worksheet if you're trying to figure out, what am I spending now, and what does that rent when I'm quoted $3,000 a month for a 1-bedroom, or more than that oftentimes. What does that include? It often includes all this. So that's back on the back table. The other piece is that you have anywhere from independent living at $2,500 for a small studio. There are communities in this area that are what are called a buy-in community. I'm not going to go into those too much, but it is basically you plunk down a big amount of money and you get a discount on your rent, and there are services that allow you to stay all the way through end of life. With questions later, I can go into that a little further. So huge amount of information. I always talk too much. Any specific questions before I get you over to Peggy? Yes?
How do you get paid?
Good question. I always forget that. No. So I am paid in the form of a referral fee. So the communities that I work with, and again, going back to our lovely law here in Washington, I am not allowed to have any kind of an exclusive contract with any community. I represent the people that are moving, but I do have agreements with communities that will pay me a referral fee for bringing them prospective people. The only time that I am not allowed to be paid that way is if somebody is already on Medicaid. The state does not allow a referral fee to be paid by communities who are accepting those Medicaid dollars. But in general, if somebody is moving, private pay means you have money in the bank, you're selling a home, you have long-term care insurance, VA aid and assistance as a veteran. There are a lot of different things that fall under private pay. Anything like that, I am paid in a referral fee from the communities. Thanks for asking that. Anything else? Oh, Tracy asked a good question. She asked if it's limited to the number of places that I will show. I try and reduce the overwhelming options out there down to what makes sense for you based on those questions that I ask, but I will show you as many as you want to see. It starts to get a little blurry between the lines. People start going, was that one, or did they offer this or that? But if you want to keep looking, I'll keep showing. Alrighty, over to, oh, I'm sorry, yes ma'am.
Is your search parameters only places that have contracted with you to look?
No, so I'll repeat the question, I'm sorry. So the question was, are the search parameters only places that I have agreements with? No, I will, if I haven't already worked with a community, I will just reach out and ask if they'll work with me. I have had a couple of times where communities may have their own sales staff and they don't want to work with a referral agent. My goal is to find the best fit. So if it is a community that does not work with me and someone is interested in that, I typically will call, find out availability, and then set an appointment. I may not go with you on, it might not be the full soup to nuts services if there isn't a way for me to be compensated. But I definitely will do a certain amount of legwork. My goal really is to introduce you to the community that is the best fit, not the ones that I have relationships with. That's a good question, thank you. Anything else? Yes, ma'am.
For an adult family home, what is an average price? Can you...
Great question. The question was, for an adult family home, what's an average price? The way that adult family homes, really all communities that provide assistance, is based on an assessment. So if you move into a community independently and you don't need any help, it's just whatever your rent is and that's it. When you need care or services, it's based on a nurse doing an assessment to determine for that community what the costs will be in a larger community. In an adult family home, there are nurses that are licensed by the state to do assessments specifically for the homes. They meet with a family, meet with a senior for, could be a couple of hours even. It's a very in-depth report. It's about 25 pages, and it covers everything that could be possibly needed on what is then created a negotiated care plan. And the negotiated care plan is one that they will sit down with you and say, these are the things that we see your family member needs help with, or you need help with if you're able to sign on your own. And you get to sign, they get to sign, and then the pricing is based on that. So adult family homes in the area, up here, probably low end that I've seen lately, I have not seen anything less than about $6,500 a month. More are starting in the $7,500, $8,000 range. I recently had clients over in the South Bellevue to Renton area, and there were several over there that were in the $7,000, $7,500 a month realm, but anything lower than that in this kind of north end to the east side, I don't think you're going to find anymore. It really is, the costs have gone up just in the last few years of everything, and that's one of them as well.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
What about Medicare, Medicaid people?
So Medicare is health insurance, and it does not cover any housing. Medicaid will cover your housing if you're eligible for Medicaid. Not a Medicaid expert. The thing that I always tell people is know what those limits are. Either speak to Peggy or a elder law attorney who understands these things. The basics are that you can't have more than $2,000 in resources in the bank to be eligible. But you can have income, you can keep your home. There are lots of things that you don't, that are myths out there. You don't have to be completely destitute to be eligible. Once you are eligible, there are communities that accept Medicaid either as a spend down, which I mentioned before, from the private pay down to Medicaid, or a direct admit Medicaid. The direct admit are fewer and way more far between, and there are more adult family homes than the larger assisted living communities that will accept that. But they do exist, and they tend to be kind of Everett North, and there's one in Bellevue, and then kind of Renton South. Just the costs in the core area are such that it's difficult for them to offer that, and so most of them don't. Anything else? Alrighty, I'm gonna turn this over to Peggy. That one or this one or?
Oh, whatever.
There we go, we got it loose from its stand, so we'll just keep passing it along.
And I like standing too, something about pacing that helps me think. So, like I mentioned before, I'm an attorney and I focus exclusively on elder law issues. And my goal for my practice is to support people in being independent as long as it's safe, and to help people when it's not safe anymore. And what I find is that the elders' idea of safe is often different than what their kids or their friends or their church members think is safe. So it's kind of an interesting line to draw. And there's fall prevention with the fire department. They may have a different idea about what's safe than the elder. So it's not an easy line to follow. What I like to say is when you've pre-planned, when you have documents in place and you've chosen somebody that you trust to serve as your attorney in fact, you will be able to have more control over who gets to take care of things when you're not able to anymore. It's a really big deal. And so the main way to do that is through powers of attorney. And you've probably heard of them, and they are interesting things. What they are is basically a contract that says, I name Ralph to step into my shoes and do what I would do as long as I was able. So there's a couple things in here that I run across often. Somebody will come in and say, I need to get mom a power of attorney so I can put her in an assisted living facility. Not gonna work. When they find out from me that that's not something they can do, they're very disappointed. And the law is very clear that an attorney in fact, which is what you call somebody who has a power of attorney, an attorney in fact has to do what they think the person that they're acting for would do. And there's interesting Supreme Court decisions up through the recent years that make it very clear that even if a senior's decisions would put them at risk, they get to decide. So if you are either hoping that a power of attorney will help you take advantage of these folks and get something in place, or you're a senior whose kids are going, Mom, Dad, I just need a power of attorney for you because I need to do things for you. It's going to be a disappointment for them. And I think it's important to let folks know if there's somebody already in a facility, most of the facilities ask that you have a power of attorney. And a lot of times, what the people that I talk to from those facilities see is that the kids are doing all sorts of stuff. Oh, I have a power of attorney. again, be clear that a power of attorney only gives you the option to do what that person would do if they were able. What that protection also says to me is that you don't have to worry about signing a power of attorney now, because your attorney, in fact, cannot jump in and overrule what you're doing. That's not the purpose, that's not the authority that they get. I really encourage people to get powers of attorney as soon as they can. I've talked to younger people, get a power of attorney. I've talked to seniors, get a power of attorney. I have a power of attorney, my husband has a power of attorney. And the second part of that is, well, what if I don't get a power of attorney? I can take good care of myself. And then something happens. Those things never happen on banker's hours, by the way. They usually happen late at night or on the weekend. So something happens, there's a car crash, you get sick, you get COVID, or you have a stroke or something, and all of a sudden, you don't have what's called legal capacity to sign those documents. Oh my gosh, what happens then? What happens then is called guardianship and conservatorship. And that's a court case that someone brings, and there's a court decision saying that you are not competent to handle your own affairs. Public record, folks. And somebody has much more control over, how the money is spent, what happens with your care decisions, all that sort of stuff. And you don't know if they're going to pick the person that you would have picked. So I do much better as an attorney. I make much more money when I represent somebody getting a guardianship or a conservatorship. I don't care. I'd rather that you plan ahead, because it gives you much more choice, much more control over who you have writing your checks and telling the doctors what to do. So now that I've convinced you all, right, that you need a power of attorney, the next question is, who should serve as my power of attorney? Now, I've had a lot of different situations in my office. My favorite one, okay, I'll tell you my favorite one. So this very nice couple came in, and we talked through things, and they decided, first we're going to give each other power of attorney, and then if we can't handle things, the next person and the next person, okay? So we got them all signed, they were all happy. They were walking out the door when the wife turned to me and said, "There's not a problem that my husband has a gambling addiction, is it?" Come on back in. Let's come on and talk some more. So, that's my favorite. The other one is a nice older couple again. And, well, I'm going to name my oldest son. It's my oldest kid, it's my oldest son. I'm going to name my oldest son, and then my second son, and then my third, like that. Happens a lot. Same thing. So, okay. So let's talk a little bit about it. How's that all going and everything? Well, he's been sober for 4 months. Let's talk. So there's a lot of ideas that folks have about what they should do and who they should name and how they should do it. And I think talking with someone like an elder law attorney or others, maybe fiduciary or something, you can talk about whether or not this person is the right person. I've also had situations where the parents have a different spiritual and religious point of view than the kids. That turns out really tricky at end-of-life decisions. So it's not just something you sign and call it a day. You want to be careful about who you appoint and who's in charge of doing all this stuff. There was one other thing I was going to say, which flew out of my mind. If I remember it, I'll let you know. The other thing that comes through my door a lot are people who come in and say, "I don't know who to name as power of attorney. all my friends are my age. I don't have any children. My spouse passed away years ago. I don't know what to do. And luckily, we'll have a little more information about that in the next presentation, because that is something, you know, there's a new term, I don't know if you've heard of it, it's pretty interesting. The new term is orphan elder. And that is, to me, describes the situation really powerfully. So, and I haven't remembered that other thing, so if I think of it, I'll let you know. Is there any questions for me as we start here? Yes, ma'am.
I was late. What is your last name?
Thank you. My last name is Sanders. I have
Okay.
cards over on the
Oh,
table.
okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, I have a durable power of attorney.
Yes, ma'am.
One of my relatives is named with an alternate. The form that I use from Seattle University Law School, and there's a box that I checked that they can step in only if my medical provider saying that I'm not able. That kind of limited, because basically I just want him to step in and pay the bill for me when I'm not able to do so. I don't want to give so much power to that person, because you never know, you know what I'm saying. But, you know, a relative is better than somebody outside the family from my viewpoint. So what do you think? I mean, because there's many boxes you can check that allow them the authority to do. I check very few, and I do check only when my doctor say that I'm not able.
So the question for those who might have, or the statement here, for those who may not have heard it, this woman here says, I've checked a box that says that the person that I've named as attorney-in-fact can only step in for me if my doctors say that I am not able to do it myself. That's what we call a springing power of attorney. It only springs into action under certain circumstances. I'm not a fan. And the reason I'm not a fan is, A, it's really hard to get doctors to write down that you're not competent to do your own stuff. It's really difficult, and we've been, I've had clients come in where we're trying to get it, I mean, it's clear that the person needs help, and we can't get the doctor to sign. And I won't, I was tempted to tell you the worst part, but I'm not going to cast aspersions on any medical institution. But it's really hard. That's the last thing they want to do, is say that their patient is beyond help. So that's the one thing. Second thing is, like I mentioned at the beginning of my talk, emergencies never happen 9 to 5, or they usually don't happen 9 to 5. The real emergencies happen at 5 at night or on the weekends. That's where you run into situations where you need some help right away. So it's all a matter of what you feel comfortable with, and if it, that's why I also say, what is it? I often refer to movies, and my favorite one is Indiana Jones. Choose wisely. So,
Yeah, there are two kinds. One is for finance, one is for healthcare.
Right.
The
Right.
one for finance is the one that I say that the medical provider has to say that I'm not able, because finance is far more complicated. And for the healthcare thing, I do have dual power of attorney, but I also have the healthcare directive.
right. So what she said was that there are two different kinds of powers of attorney. One is for finances, which is right, and that's the one that she has a springing power of attorney. And the other is for healthcare, which is not springing, is what I'm.
Right.
I've got one here, and then I'll come to you.
I'm interested in your comments
I realize you're not gonna solve these problems in this conversation, but,
I have a card over there.
yeah, no, that's good. But I wanna bring up the fact that, again, it's 4 o'clock in the morning, you're in a car accident, you need the person with your medical power of attorney who is 4 states away and may have their phone on silent. Could you talk to how, there must be a way to cope with these situations. What are some of the things that we can put in place for those kinds of situations?
So the question is, what if things happen at 4 o'clock in the morning and your power of attorney is 4 states over and has their phone on silent? How do you get somebody to step in and do what you need? In the case of an accident, for example, don't quote me on this, but I believe the doctors will do whatever it takes to keep you alive in the interim. So whether or not you wanted open heart surgery, they'll give you open heart surgery. Whether or not you wanted,
And whether or not you can afford it, and whether or not you do not resuscitate.
right. And the do not resuscitate is particularly interesting to me because if the doctors don't have other direction, they're going to resuscitate you. They're going to do whatever it takes to keep you alive. And, it's interesting because in the past 2.5 years, there's been big questions about ventilators and whether or not somebody should be put on a ventilator. So I think I'm getting close to my 15 minutes.
We've got lots of time, so.
Okay. Yes, ma'am.
I'm a little fuzzy, okay, so the doctor will not say that you're incompetent, and so how do you activate then the power of attorney?
What I usually do with my clients is something that's effective upon signing the power of attorney. So instead of waiting for it to be effective for somebody else to say, yes, it should be go into effect, it says right in the document that it's in effect right away. Now the concern is, that I'm hearing from you, is, well, why would I sign something that goes into effect right away so that somebody could go in and do whatever they want? The answer is they can't. But that's why I say pick carefully. Even if you have lots of family members, there may be occasion where you don't want to name any of them for whatever reason. So it's really a matter of trusting that the person you name isn't going to do that. But what I do, what this lady was talking about is, this power of attorney shall be effective upon the statement from 2 physicians that I'm not capable of managing my own affairs. Something like that?
Right.
Mine says, this power of attorney is effective immediately upon my signature. So you don't have to wait for anybody to clarify that you're not capable of managing your own affairs. So that's the difference, yes? That makes sense, right?
Yes.
So that's kind of how I do it with my clients. And really it is a matter of choice and comfort and choosing wisely. I don't mean to be flip, but that's really an important part of it.
So if you're in the hospital, having a stroke or whatever, how does the hospital know? You have to, maybe it's not even your own hospital, who knows? How are they going to know that you have somebody who can make choices for you?
Well, that's a great question. So how does anybody know that you have a power of attorney if you're even out of state maybe, or somewhere where, you're in a hospital on an emergency basis, and how are they supposed to know there's a power of attorney? 2 ways. One is, I'd like to do or offer cards that go in your wallet. And if you have a card in your wallet, they're going to be looking to see who you are. And you'll also have a card there that says, my power of attorney is so-and-so, and here's his or her phone number. That's one of the ways. The other way that I like to suggest, and this is mostly for around home, I guess, I always suggest that you take your power of attorney, and if you have a healthcare directive, living will, take them to your doctor. Have the doctor put it in your medical record. Places like Swedish and Virginia Mason have these massive computers. And I'm pretty sure that if you end up in a Swedish hospital, they'll look and see if you're in the computer, and if you are, it'll pull up whatever documents are in your medical record. So that's one of the suggestions I have.
So if a family brings mom in to see you for a meeting about mom's future or something else like that, who do you represent?
Oh, very good question. He's good, he's not a plant, really. So the question was, if a family comes in to talk with me, who's the client? And the client is always the elder. So kid goes, I think we should sell the house. Well, that's nice, but I represent the elder. Do you want to sell your house? No, I don't want to sell my house. We're not going to sell your house. Okay? The other, oh gosh, it was almost there, and it went right through the, oh well.
Well,
Yes.
too, that some people don't notify their power of attorney that they've been assigned to that. The second one is, what happens if this senior person doesn't have a will in place or power of attorney, and they have children and decisions have to be made?
Okay, so great questions. The first one is, I forgot.
To tell the person you
Oh,
name them.
whether or not you should tell the person you name as power of attorney that they are your power of attorney. The answer is probably a pretty good idea. Because it's also kind of good to talk to them before you name them, to make sure they're comfortable taking on the responsibility of stepping in for you if something should happen. So I'm a believer in sharing power of attorney. Sharing the will, not so much. That's up to you. But sharing the powers of attorney are pretty important, and talking with somebody ahead of time is pretty good. And the second question was, no power of attorney, no will, several children. Then what happens? Well, then it gets really interesting, because the family members, the next of kin, get to make some medical decisions and some decisions about what happens after you pass away, and some end-of-life decisions. And say there's 5 siblings, and they don't get along so good. There's really difficult chance to get everybody on the same page about healthcare and financial decisions. I've actually, some people say, well, I'm going to name my son as power of attorney for finances and my daughter as power of attorney for healthcare. Okay, so what has happened before is daughter says, Mom needs this help in an assisted living or in-home care, and son goes, I'm not going to pay for it. And all of a sudden you have the same, disagreement. My feeling is, not only do I want you to choose who you want to step in for you, but you do it in a way that causes the least amount of argument and disagreement with your family members, because it's hard enough to find out that your parents are not immortal, and it's hard enough to see the things that can happen with your spouse or whatever, without adding that complication. So that's why, there was a hand? Yeah?
I was just thinking, in thinking about preparing or having a power of attorney prepared, we each have our own different scenarios in life that we need to address. So can powers of attorney be as permissive or restrictive as you want them to be as you prepare it and get it written?
Absolutely. So the question was, how much, I'm going to paraphrase it a little bit, how much discretion do you have in what kind of powers that you give to your power of attorney? Can you change it for your particular wants and your particular, what you want and what you need? And the answer is absolutely. Absolutely. And you want to talk to your elder law attorney about what you want and how we might be able to adjust those things in order to, in order to make sure that that meets your needs, not somebody else's. And one last thing, one last point. This may be what I was thinking of, I don't know. One of the documents I offer to my clients are, it sounds kind of, I don't know, and it's authority for disposition of remains. What is that? What that is you give somebody the authority to make decisions about what happens after you pass away. I'll tell you what, I did have, in 12 years, this has only come up once, but when it did, it was horrible. Because there was, turns out that the document I prepared saved this thing, but daughter was going and said, Mom wants to be cremated, and son was going, oh no, we're not going to cremate Mom. We're going to bury her in the family plot, and no, I don't want my mom to be cremated. My client had signed a document that says daughter gets to decide. Daughter gets the authority to decide what to do with the remains, and what could have been an ugly fight and a long time without resolution was solved by that document. So there's a lot of these things people don't necessarily think of that you want to think about those things, and I'm good at pointing out all those things. So we're going to pass it along.
One more question.
Oh, one more question.
Well, I just wanted to add, along with having the little, contact card in your wallet, the phones nowadays, all your smartphones, you can put in a ICE, which stands for in case of emergency, and a lot of them have a built-in app where you can enter all your information, your emergency information for your people.
Yay, the new phones have apps where you can put information of the case of emergency. And you can probably put names and numbers for your powers of attorney and any other really important information should there be an emergency.
No, sorry, she just said you have to have the passcode to get into it, and you actually don't. It's one of the few things that, and they made it that way specifically, there was a fireman back here, so that they can get into it quickly.
Yes.
I'm sorry,
Okay.
could you repeat that?
Yes, so there was a question about whether you needed a password or a passcode to get into it, and the answer is no. Is that right back there? Can you guys get into a phone on an emergency basis right away? If there's, in case of... Okay. Somebody. Okay. Yeah.
The one thing I just wanted to finish with for Peggy, and then one more question here. I'm guilty of being a checklist maker.
Yeah.
So I make a list and I check it off and I'm good because I checked it off my list. If you have a power of attorney that you did 20 or 30 or 40 years ago, I'm glad you have one, but please get it updated.
Yes, it's a good idea. Very good idea. You?
Can you explain that if you have a contract with a funeral home, it has to be irrevocable for Medicaid to take it?
Okay, so I could probably talk for 2 more hours on Medicaid. I mean, literally, it's very complex. I've heard it compared to the tax code. So it's very complicated. And the answer, I'm surprised I haven't used this yet, but the answer is, it depends. And that's kind of how that works. A lot of times, we lawyers have to say, it depends. It depends on the situation, it depends on how much money you're talking about, it depends on a number of things. And kind of as a general rule, if you have, if you've purchased if you've purchased a funeral plan, not the service, but the location and the service, if you do cremation and all that, that is not an available resource that is considered when determining your eligibility. But once you get ready to apply,
Apply for what?
Medicaid.
Which is limited to the $2,000.
It's more
Depends.
complex, it's more complicated than that.
It depends, because there's a lot of property that's exempt. If you're married, you can do a lot of stuff to preserve assets for your partner. It's literally is another 2-hour discussion. And if anybody is thinking about Medicaid, one of the things that I do is the documents I prepare include tools that somebody can use if down the line somebody has to apply for Medicaid. So the powers of attorney say you can transfer transfer assets in order to qualify for Medicaid under certain circumstances. So, I could just, that one question could go for 15 minutes.
Do the people supplying the contract, do they have the form to make it irrevocable, or how does the person make their funeral arrangements irrevocable?
So the question is, how do you make your funeral arrangements irrevocable?
Because it's a prepaid thing, so you pay and then you have a document saying that.
So just so that I can make it really complicated, usually what you have is a trust. The trust that they have and the materials that you buy are in a trust, and the trust is irrevocable. That's what the funeral home will take care of all that for you. They have the documents. But there you go. It's not easy. They don't want to make it easy for you. So, I'm happy to, if you want to call me or something, I can talk to you a little bit more about it. But it really is complex, I promise.
Maybe last one?
Last question, so, yes ma'am.
Back to this power of attorney and having ice on your phone and all that. Is it protocol for the emergency room and the fire department to check for that? So that it, it's accessible?
The question is it protocol for the, like the hospital, the doctors, and the fire department and EMTs to check for information on power of attorney and whether you have one? Yes, I'm hearing the back, which doesn't surprise me. And the other thing is the doctors don't want the responsibility of making decisions if they don't have to have it. So they'll be looking on your medical records, they'll be looking on, to make sure. They often look for the healthcare directive, which is end of life stuff. They really want to know that one. And they'll look for the power of attorney because that gives them cover. So they really are interested. Now I love talking, but I've taken up way more than my share. There you go.
And we will all stay afterwards to have individual questions. So if you think of something else, we're not dashing out the door when we're finished here. We'll stick around.
For sure we will.
There we go. Thank you, John.
So, quick refresher, again, my name is John Platt. I am with Pro Fiducia Services, and we are a business that we exist for those elder orphans out there. Thank you for that term, Peggy. We exist to give people a choice as they do their estate planning, as they think about who they may have in their lives at the point that they are at that could serve as their agent under a power of attorney for financial decisions, or who do they have that could be ready to be the executor of their estate when that day comes. And our purpose in life is to provide individual people or couples the peace of mind of knowing that they have a choice, that maybe they don't have family, or maybe they do, but the family that they have lives a long ways away. Or the family that they have doesn't live a long ways away, they live nearby, but frankly have very busy lives of their own. 4 kids and a job and a busy travel schedule. And our purpose in life as professional fiduciaries is to give people an option, to give them a choice, to give them some path towards peace of mind. And so we serve as the agent or the attorney, in fact, under powers of attorney for financial decisions. Professional fiduciaries serve as the executor, is what we used to call it. Now it's called a personal representative. And I regularly use this analogy that I think helps people visualize. Think of someone such as Peggy Sanders and Sanders Elder Law as an architect. And if she's an architect, we're the general contractor. Our job is to be the project manager and read those blueprints that Peggy has put together with your input, your wishes of what you want to have happen to you and to your stuff in the event that you can't do it for yourself anymore. Our job is then to read those blueprints and execute on them. And perhaps a value that comes with hiring a professional fiduciary is you're getting the benefit of people who've done it before. It's not an on-the-job training sort of scenario. You get the benefit of teamwork. I have Melissa and Sarah here as part of our team, and this is how we roll. We work for people as a team so that there's some redundancy, there's backup, and peace of mind that comes from that. And we're also, because this is a business, this is what we do. We get up in the morning and we go to work as fiduciaries. We're not trying to do this on top of our day job or our job search or going to school or some other distraction in life. This is what we get up and are dedicated to making happen every day. So that's brief, but I'm happy to answer questions. While it's on my mind, I want to echo what Melissa said just a second ago. How many of you have an iPhone and you have a passcode and you swipe up maybe and you get that? In the bottom right there, it says emergency. And I can touch that and it takes me to my list of contacts, medical ID, and right there is the list of people that I have entered. It also has my blood type.
Wow.
It has whatever I happen to be allergic to. It has the name of my doctor. And I strongly recommend to everybody here, please take advantage of this because, as Peggy said, you just never know. And we have our phones with us, so.
Does it work for the other kind of phone? Android?
Yeah.
I'm sure it does on an Android. The question was on an Android. I just don't happen to have personal experience with that one. Ralph?
It does.
It does, okay, great.
I'm sorry, what good is it if you need a password to get into the phone?
No, he's saying you don't, it's on the password screen.
Oh,
But
I'm sorry.
But what if you don't use a password on your phone? If you don't have that little option, like, I turn on my phone and I just have my apps. I don't have the little special thing.
Good question.
Could you repeat the question?
Yes. What do you do if you don't happen to have or you don't choose to use a passcode on your phone? I'm sure there's a way, and I'd be happy to help you after the meeting today to figure it out. I just don't know what it is.
It might be
Yeah.
under your health app. Most of the phones have a
Yeah.
health app.
I deleted that ages ago.
That was my one thing.
Oh, the what? Oh, right, yeah, we, for this purpose, thank you for reminding me, we did create some handouts for clients that demonstrate how to enter a medical ID in case of emergency, so we'd be happy to email that to you. Yes, ma'am?
I'm interested in the fiduciary services, and I'm wondering, how many years have you been in business, and what is your background, and how large is your staff? And if you have, I noticed your Hardak picked up, the address is Bellingham, but the phone number on the page that I picked up is a Seattle number, which relates to how large is your staff, I guess.
Would you like a job? Very, very attentive, great attention to detail. So
Librarian.
Excellent, okay.
That explains it.
So there were a few questions in there, but it sounded like background. How did we get into this line of work? And
Well, how many years has your company existed?
okay, how many years?
And, what's your background, legal, blah, blah.
Okay. I'm sorry? Oh, okay. So, Pro Fiducia Services, and I'm here to talk about fiduciary services in general, but I appreciate the question. Pro Fiducia as a business has existed since 2017. And personally, prior to that, I managed a different fiduciary service business in the area. And prior to that, my personal story, similar to what Adrian shared, my grandparents were Depression-era farmers, and they were those elder orphans. They had one child who died. My dad died when I was 8, and I stepped into their lives as their fiduciary as a very young man and learned that I liked older people. I liked taking care of them. I liked having that kind of responsibility, and as I have grown older myself and seen the world a little bit, I recognize that there are a lot of people out there who would like to have that kind of a choice. And so that was the nexus or the reason for starting Pro Fiducia Services when we did 4 years ago. We just realized that there's a very big need for it out there. Yes, ma'am.
Are you for-profit or non-profit? Are you licensed in the state of Washington? And also, I would assume that if we retain you or Peggy, what are the fees? Because some are quite expensive from what I understand. A friend of mine told me about Guardian Services of Seattle, and they can charge quite a bit of money.
So we are, the questions were, are we for-profit? And we are. We're a business. We're an S-corp. And
License or not?
well, yes, we have a business license, absolutely. We're licensed, we're bonded, we're insured. We do background checks on all of our employees and contractors. And our services, we bill by the hour.
By the hour?
Yes, no percentages. We bill by the hour, and our billing, if you will, it doesn't begin until one of those estate planning documents comes into play, until there's a springing event, or until someone has passed away. We have a number of people who hire us today to be ready to go to work at some point in the future. And the purpose of that is so that we can cultivate a relationship with them and get to know the things that a fiduciary is going to need to know someday. For example, a fiduciary is going to be responsible for walking into whatever financial institution you happen to have an account. That's part of the fiduciary's responsibility, is to take care of those assets if you're incapacitated, or to deal with them if you are no longer with us in the manner that you wanted to have it. We need to know which financial institutions.
Right.
And so in our effort to cultivate a relationship with our clients is, we don't want to know what's in the account. We don't want to know what the account numbers are. That's not important today. But it is important to know where to start looking. Yes, ma'am?
Can you be named as an alternate? Like my relative is the main one, you alternate in case that something happened to that person. Because, you never know, and he traveled quite a bit. And if he's not available, can you step in as an alternate?
We strongly encourage people to consider having an alternate for that very purpose. And part of the reason for doing that is to give their individual family member, if they have a family member in that primary position, to give them an opportunity when that time arrives to perhaps decline if the time to serve, as Peggy said, that never seems to happen between 9 and 5.
Exactly.
So if it happens to be that they are suddenly wake up and they find that they're a fiduciary, maybe it's not a good time in their life. And it would be really a nice gift to them to have something else already baked into the estate planning documents that gives that person an opportunity to defer to an alternate. But I would defer to Peggy
Right.
as the strategist on.
Do you have office in, say, Linwood admins around this area? Where is your closest office?
And that goes back to her question over there. So Pro Fiducia, when we started it, we chose to work remotely from the very beginning. So Melissa lives in Bellingham, Sarah lives nearby in, what do you call it?
Everett, Snohomish.
Everett, Snohomish. I happen to live in the South Sound region now. We have a couple of employees in the Seattle area. And we have clients all over the state of Washington. And we find for the kind of work that we do, it's way more efficient and a much more friendly work environment if we work more spread out rather than having one single office that everybody has to commute to.
Do you drive to the people?
I'm sorry?
Do you drive to your clients then?
We do. Most of our work, of course, is done at the direction of clients. The question was, do we drive to our clients? Thank you for, and yes, absolutely. We will meet wherever people want to meet. We'll meet them on their level, whatever's comfortable for them.
I'd
Yes,
like to toss in, when John and I met, he brought me in to help with one of his clients. And for those who need a little bit a different picture or a little bit more what fiduciaries can do, yes, there's the standby or the power of attorney and all those things. But for this particular person, I don't know about you, but I get a scam call a day. I get 10 scam calls a day. My mother-in-law's been scammed. I've had clients have been scammed. And I think that this person that John and I worked with had been scammed at some point, and she made the determination that she didn't want to have that happen again and wanted John and his company to make sure that the finances, even though she lived in her own home, she's making her own decisions, she didn't give up really anything other than, I just want somebody else to make sure that my money is safe. And they brought in John. Then she decided at some point things were happening and she wanted to move to a community, and I was brought in. But really it's more than just the nuts and bolts of banking and documents. It's really John's company comes in and does so much more. I've worked with this company to find another community for someone when it was time to move because they were the power of attorney in that case. So it's really, it's a lot of services, more than just the numbers. And John, I know personally, has gotten involved in all sorts of things, showing up at people's houses when they needed help. So they do a lot more than just the numbers.
Sometimes we play bad cop.
Yes.
When someone is being maybe preyed upon, scammed, it's sometimes convenient for people to say to whoever it is that's scamming, actually, I'd like you to talk to my fiduciary over here. And that usually stops the calls or stops the inquiries. So, yes, ma'am?
So the thing that triggers you to get involved, would it be because someone named your company in the power of attorney documents that Peggy would prepare? Is that what brings you in, or?
That's correct. How we get involved is when you are in the stages of preparing or updating your estate planning and you're working with Peggy and documents are being drafted, very often Peggy's office will ask us for suggested language of how to name us in those documents. Yes, ma'am.
I had a very naive or narrow view of a fiduciary. My understanding coming into today was that a fiduciary is someone who does not financially benefit from the investment decisions that that person might help me make. Could you please clarify the difference between that role and what you just described that sounds much more like what a lawyer does?
That's a great question, and I know exactly what you're talking about. There was...
Maybe repeat the question in case someone didn't hear me.
Yeah. Definitions around the word fiduciary. The fiduciary responsibility of a wealth manager versus the responsibilities of a fiduciary in someone's estate planning. Yeah. And if I'm not mistaken, this has been in the last 7-8 years that there was a rather large push within the wealth management society that people who were investing or were investment managers for their clients needed to make the statement that they were a fiduciary. And I think if you will, the definition hinges on there's fiduciary responsibility and there are fiduciary tasks. the task of executing or a fiduciary role. In someone's estate planning, every will has a personal representative identified, and their responsibility is to make sure that the decedent's wishes are carried out. That's different from being a wealth manager. So, Megan? Yeah.
Thanks, this is a legal issue, so I thought I'd throw in my 2 cents. A fiduciary is not a person. Even when we call a certain group a fiduciary, it's because they're exercising their responsibility with a fiduciary responsibility. The legal definition of fiduciary is you have to take special care. And that's a simplified version, and if I'm wrong, you let me know. And it's one of my pet peeves is when English words are changed to mean something they're not. Fiduciary is a type of responsibility. So your investment manager can say, we're a fiduciary because we take special care and we're under special responsibility to be careful with your investments. Is he a fiduciary? Not really. But he's saying that to show that he or she is exercising their business with a higher level of responsibility. What we're talking here is somebody who's acting as a fiduciary. That's a noun. The other is an adjective, that's a noun. And so what he's saying is he's somebody who steps into this role and does things with that high level of responsibility and care. So that's a noun. Does that?
Yeah, it doesn't
Understand?
match, it doesn't match what you read legally about a fiduciary. So it's good to clarification that the legal information out there doesn't match your legal definition.
Yeah, and especially with.
Because it's very clear, if you hire a fiduciary in wealth management, they cannot financially benefit from the wealth management choices you make. Like if you buy some equity, they, unlike a stockbroker, they don't benefit from that. That is the legal definition of someone who's helping you as a fiduciary with wealth decisions. And that doesn't match anything of what you guys have said today. So that helps me understand that there is a wide range of understanding of this very specific legal term. So thank you.
Any other questions before we turn to karaoke?
Actually, Megan, do you want to follow up on that?
If that's okay. Again, and I don't doubt that under the legal definition of a fiduciary in the wealth management area. We're not talking, and it's consistent because the fiduciary in the wealth management can't make money off of the decisions he or she makes for your benefit.
Yep.
He doesn't make money off the decisions he makes for your benefit. He charges an hourly fee for his services. Does that, and so he doesn't, it's sort of the same thing in that regard.
Yeah, I think that makes sense.
Does that sound?
Yes, that's what fiduciary and wealth management does.
Jill, there was another question over here, I think.
Okay, we have a question over here and then a question you, yes ma'am.
I was just wondering, like, if someone hired your company to be the fiduciary to execute the written document, and if you're a third party, what happens if you leave that company or if that company dissolves? Does that force the person to come back in and update their power of attorney with the attorney that they created it with?
Great question. And
Can you repeat it, please?
the question was, what happens in the evolution of time if you have an estate plan and Melissa and Sarah are named in there as your fiduciaries and 10 years go by? Well, one of the things that we strongly recommend is that everyone consider their estate planning documents as a work in progress. It's not a one and done. There's this great article that we often send to clients that talk about the big D's 23 things that start with the letter D that would give someone reason to maybe revisit their estate plan, and one of those Ds is decade. And we have been in assignments where the last will and testament was written so long ago that the fiduciary that was identified in there was a bank that hasn't existed for 25 years. So we've lived it, we've seen it, the importance of keep your relationship with your estate planning attorney fresh and reconsider whether or not your estate planning documents as they are right now are still a good fit for where you are in your life. Another D is dependence. Many people wrote wills when they had little kids that are no longer little kids anymore. And so it's a good idea to revisit those.
Can I find that on the internet, or can you send me a copy?
I'll send it to you.
We'll
I
send
was
you
looking
that.
for a copy.
Yeah. So, did I cover your questions?
So basically you're saying the responsibility falls on the person who has that power of attorney to keep up and keep everything current as far as, you know, if who they named in there is still in that capacity.
That is part of it. It's also true that when people hire us today to be ready for them in the future, it's an ongoing relationship and you're going to hear from us. You're going to hear from your fiduciary on a regular basis. So you'll have an opportunity to know that your fiduciary is still around. And then of course, with the suggested language that we offer to professionals such as Peggy, there is language in there that provides the opportunity for successors and assigns to be able to carry on the mandate covered by this person's will. But that's getting kind of technical and out of my depth, but that's there. We have tried to think those things through and provide people the peace of mind of knowing that there is some continuity. So I see, I'm going to ask the lady in the back and then I'll come back to you.
I'm wondering who governs fiduciaries. She mentioned RCWs that actually somewhat aligns with the work she does. What kind of professional standards are you held to, or what kind of legal standards are you held to?
Well, that's a really good question. I will tell you that
they set themselves up as a fiduciary.
well, lots of people who are family members.
Repeat the question, please.
Well, there were several, but so what are the professional standards? What are the licensing? Is that correct?
Yeah.
Is that what are the accountability standards? So that for a professional fiduciary service business such as ours. So a business like ours exists solely upon referrals. We're here and we are in people's lives because another professional advisor in their life suggested that maybe they'd like to have the option of choosing a fiduciary. So as a business that depends on referrals, it's very important to us that we will always underpromise and overdeliver. Reputation is everything. And we are under, and dutifully so, necessarily so, we're under the microscope of the larger professional community, not just of attorneys, but also of wealth managers, sometimes of CPAs. And so it's very important that we do absolutely everything by the book and do it transparently. Fiduciaries are under, and this is going to be maybe more Peggy's area, but they are under the jurisdiction of Superior Court in the state of Washington. And we are required on occasion to demonstrate our transparency to Superior Court if asked. I'm trying to remember what the other question was. Is that helping?
No, that helps, yes.
Okay. No. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, I have a simple question. Can we name Peggy Sanders or your company as personal representative of our last will and testament, either as primary or alternate? Can it be done or not? Or you don't get involved in that? I'm talking about the will, I'm not talking about estate plan. I'm not talking about the final will, the last will and testament. can we name you, your company, or Peggy, as personal representative to execute that will or not?
So the question is, in a last will and testament, could an individual name Sanders Elder Law or Pro Fiducia Services or both as alternates to one another in the role
Just
of personal
one
representative?
one of the two, either as primary or alternate. In the case that my relative would back out, because he traveled extensively.
So I'll speak, of course, for Pro Fiducia
Okay.
Services, and I will say that yes, on a regular basis, we are named as an alternate to a family member.
But
You know,
can
last
you
one.
be primary as well? Can you be like,
Correct, we can also
You
serve
can
as
be-
the primary, yes
what
ma'am.
about
No.
Peggy? Can you do that? No, you cannot.
It's a professional choice for me not to serve in that role for a number of reasons, but I don't do that.
You don't do that, okay. What about other attorney? Do they do that, or most of them
The
don't?
question
like-
is, what about other attorneys? Do they ever serve as personal representative? Again, it's a choice. I know some, and it used to happen a lot longer ago. But I don't know any of my colleagues that work in elder law that choose to do that.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
Was there one more question over here somewhere?
Do banks and credit unions serve those roles also? Do they have a fiduciary department?
Do banks or credit unions
Yeah.
have a fiduciary department or serve in fiduciary roles? And the answer is sometimes.
Okay.
We see where maybe the trust department
Yeah.
of a financial institution will serve in that capacity. We have seen that. Yes, ma'am.
Getting down to brass tacks, what do you charge?
I didn't hear.
What do you charge?
Maybe that's
What
a,
do
maybe
you
that's a
charge?
private question
Yeah.
offline.
Okay, yeah,
That's a better question offline.
Okay.
There we go.
But I will say that people that I have spoken with who have left a financial institution, in other words, ended a relationship with a financial institution as their fiduciary, very often did though because they wanted to have people that they could connect with. They wanted to have a personal relationship with their fiduciary rather than with a department at an institution that maybe packed up and moved the trust department to Vancouver, Washington. So,
Okay.
sir, do you have, or ma'am, do you have a question? No, that's all I have. Anybody else?
I was
Yes, ma'am.
just curious, how many fiduciaries do you have at your company at this present time that serve in that capacity?
How many, the question is, how many fiduciaries do we have on our team at Pro Fiducia? We're currently a team of 6, soon to become 7, maybe 8. I will also say, because again, I'm here to talk about fiduciary services. I happen to be part of one of them, but there are other professional fiduciary service providers in the area, some smaller, some larger than ours.
Any other questions for John?
We will be happy, again, I brought my colleagues Sarah and Melissa. We will be here afterwards to answer questions. We have some handouts, and thank you very much for having us.
Thank you. Thank you all so much for coming, and we will all stick around for a bit. We do have a table in the back with cards and information from our individual companies. Again, as John said, this was not meant to be a commercial about any of our individual companies, but about the services that each of us provide. There are many companies and attorneys and fiduciaries and home care in the area. I always say anything that we're doing in anything we've talked about today is really personal. Find the right fit, find the right company, find the right person that works for you and your family. We just wanted to make sure that you know that these services are available. They are here, they are local, and so we'll stick around and answer any questions that you have. Yes, and back over to.
Hi, I'm Susie Chandler again with Northwest Neighbors Network. We put this on today with the huge, tremendous help of Elizabeth Zeller from Montlake Terrace Senior Center. She's the executive director. And really appreciate it so much, and there's membership forms floating around, and great water and coffee over there too, so I just wanted to give a big shout out to you and your team. So.
We're excited to have so many people back in the building again.
There we go. All right. As I said, there's some treats and drink things over there. Our brochures and things are over there, and we'll stick around. Thank you so much for coming.